Hey, so I get this question all the time about how to get a tattoo apprenticeship, how to be a tattooer, and why they're so hard to get. And so I'm going to try to make this quick. Number one, tattooing is a work trade. It's not actually an art first, and it's very different than school. So traditional apprenticeships used to be that you worked in a studio in exchange for the knowledge of tattooing. I did an apprenticeship that was traditional, and what I did was I worked 20 to 30 hours a week unpaid, and all I did was scrub tubes, make needles, make pigment, and anything and everything the studio needed me to do. I also worked nights in order to make sure that I paid my bills. But what I was doing was not free labor. I was learning a trade skill, and that's what a trade skill is. And the work exchange is hands-on because tattooing is about experience. So a studio and a tattoo artist got a lot from having an apprentice because they helped the studio function and they got to pass on the knowledge of tattooing. But nowadays, we don't do those things anymore because we don't make our own pigments, we don't make our own needles anymore. So what you now have is a lot of really good artists that are very weary about taking on apprentices because essentially they get nothing out of teaching somebody to tattoo except competition. And these days, a lot of people expect learning to tattoo is a lot like school or education, and they don't have the proper work ethic involved in order to learn a trade because a trade is all about work exchange for experience. Learning to tattoo can't be read in a book. It has to be done and practiced every single day. And a lot of people aren't aware of that, and when they get into a studio, they just can't hang. Unfortunately, you have a lot of really talented and skilled tattooers who don't want to take on apprentices because it's a lot of energy and a lot of time and a lot of resources that they're donating to somebody for really nothing in exchange. But we do have our artists that will charge for apprenticeships, and I feel like that's worth it. Now, a lot of really good tattooers will usually only take on maybe 1 to 3 apprentices their entire career. So teaching someone to tattoo has to be the right fit, which is why it's so rare to take on apprentices. I've been tattooing for 20 years and I've had 2, and they are amazing artists. I've also had 2 other people attempt to apprentice and wash out, which is what happens. Sometimes people will even complete their apprenticeships and then quit 2 to 3 years into tattooing because it requires a higher than average work ethic. Tattooing is 24/7. When I get home from work, I spend 3 to 4 hours in my drawing for the next day. And then I go into work and I tattoo for about 6 to 8 hours, and I do it over and over again. It's a 24-hour job. It never ends. And because it's an experiential trade, it takes years to get good at what you're doing, which is also why it's awesome. So if you really want to learn to tattoo, this is my advice. Put together a portfolio of your 5 to 10 best pieces. Quality over quantity. Take it to the artist you want to learn from and ask them if they're willing to teach you. If they say no, ask them if they're willing to critique your portfolio and tell you any advice that they have that would help you in order to get an apprenticeship in the future if they were open to it, or what they could do in order to seek an apprenticeship elsewhere. And don't give up. And the last piece of advice is never ever try to teach yourself on your own because you're going to learn years of bad habits, and tattooers are less likely to take you on as an apprentice. But remember, never give up, keep asking, and keep taking every bit of advice that you can. And if you really want to be a tattooer, it'll happen for you. And remember, it's a trade skill. It's a work trade skill, and it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of work, and a lot of love.